So, for this review, I'm doing things a little differently than normal. Today I'm going to unbox the Fosi Luna3 turntable, give you a bit of perspective, well, my perspective, and show you around. I'll go deeper in a follow-up video with setup and audio demonstrations. And, dear viewers, making this a two-parter gives you the opportunity to comment and tell me what you want to see. So, let's unbox it. Well, that's as far as I got on day one. As you can see, I haven't fitted the belt. That small circular thing you saw is the large centre hole adapter for singles. I don't think I'll be using that, but hey, you might if you ever stole a jukebox from a pub back in the 1970s. As you saw in the unboxing, the external packaging was a bit rough and ready. This is common with review items, so it's nothing to worry about. Yours, I would expect it to be pristine, and I'm sure you'll tell me if it's not. You might also have noticed that I noticed I'd have to be careful removing the turntable from the plastic bag, and then I wasn't quite careful enough. No harm done, fortunately. I'm sure you'll be okay. So, why didn't I fit the belt? I didn't get a manual, and I wanted to do everything by the book, and there was no book. Things like this sometimes happen with review samples. And when I dashed off an email, Fosi responded inside of half an hour with a PDF. I could now show you my clumsy attempts at finishing the setup, but Fosi has made a very clear video, better than I could have done, linked of course in the description, and I highly recommend it. But before I finish setting up the Luna3, I'm going to remotely disable your stop button and give you my perspectives. Kidding, but not about the perspectives. I had a very nice turntable in my youth. Garrard 401 turntable, SME 3009 arm, Shure V15 cartridge. My memory fails me a bit. I know I aspired to a V15, but I don't recall whether I went the next step from their second to top-of-the-line model. Oh well. Things have moved on though, and what we might have thought of as an entry-level turntable in the 1970s, like the Garrard SP25, has morphed into products from Angels, Horn and Fio, which I've reviewed, and others. I'd call these turntables entry-level because they're decent turntables for anyone who wants to play a record, hear nice music, and that's about the limit of their ambition for now. They're entry-level to turntabling, that's all. But my old SME 3009 had things you could fiddle with. Tracking force, of course, overhang, height, anti-skate, all good enthusiast stuff. But an entry-level turntable, well, you'll get tracking force, and since as an entry-level user, not yet aspiring to be an enthusiast, well, you're probably going to follow the instructions in the manual and leave it at that. No fiddling and no anti-skating adjustment. And as I found after carefully levelling these turntables and playing the blank section of my test disc, the stylus did, indeed, make a beeline for the centre, which is exactly what anti-skating is meant to avoid, to balance the stylus in the centre of the groove. So when Fosi asked me if I'd like to review the Luna3, this was my question. Does it have anti-skating adjustment? Call it bias, if you like. If it didn't, then I wouldn't have done the review. But as you can see, here I am. So you can take it that it does. I'll be getting my test disc out for my part 2 video follow-up, and we'll see what happens. I'll play you some audio from my test disc too, and you can judge for yourself whether the bias is correct. As to whether this is an entry-level turntable, I'd say it's an entry to hi-fi enthusiast turntables. And if you don't yet have a turntable and you want one, and of course you're an enthusiast because you wouldn't be here otherwise, then the Luna 3 or a turntable like it should be your entry level. It's a proper turntable, not just a handy thing for playing records. Actually, I can't find anything bad. And come on, no one's going to call this turntable ugly. It's a lovely piece of product design. I consider look and feel to be important. And although you can judge the look, what I can't show you in this video is how the Luna 3 feels. It feels like a substantial piece of kit. 3.5 kilograms according to the spec, and I believe that well enough not to bother to weigh it myself. The platter indeed is a substantial part of the kit as well. As we know, audiophiles prefer belt drive, which of course the Luna 3 is, because it damps out any vibrations from the motor, and a high-mass platter rejects them, if they're there, even further. Commenters might care to opine whether belt drive is a total guarantee against the cogging they might hear or think they hear from a direct drive turntable. Whether there's any rumble from the bearing, well, in part 2, I'll play you a silent groove from my test record and you can judge for yourself. And you can comment whether you feel that the belt needs to be played in before it'll reach its full potential. As I said, today I'm looking, not testing. That'll be part 2. But we want to know what this turntable has, and importantly, doesn't have. Okay, the big doesn't have. It doesn't have an internal RIAA preamp to flatten the frequency response and bring the signal up to line level. It will be interesting to know what commenters feel about this. Clearly, an internal preamp is a useful convenience feature, but an enthusiast would probably want to choose their preamp, and maybe even have more than just the one. But a turntable could, and some do, have both phono level outputs and line level, so that's the best of both worlds. I'd have to think, though, that there would need to be a switch to switch out the internal preamp from the circuit. Otherwise, the cartridge is going to be loaded twice, at 23.5 kilo ohms rather than the traditional 47. And don't forget the picofarads. I'll just leave that dangling as something to ponder on because it doesn't apply here. What's unusual to me, though perhaps not to you, is that the outputs are on 2 RCA sockets with a ground connection on a binding post. I'm more used to having cables captive to the turntable, like the Technics SL7 I used to have, or to the arm like my old SME. Not a big deal maybe, but it's one more thing for an audiophile to have to consider. In a moment of madness, I wondered whether there's any such thing as an audiophile ground cable. Calling it a cable is a bit much even, it's just a bit of wire. Off to Google. Oh yes, notice that 2 RCAs plus ground combo. 267 Great British pounds. Too cheap? Don't worry. You can have the Shun Yata Alpha V2 phono from 3,250 GBP. I said from. Commenters, what do you notice here? Okay, we all make mistakes, and this is about as tiny as a mistake can get. I'm sure it will be corrected for the next edition. I'm going to comment on things in order as I see them in the manual. Not everything, but everything that interests me today. The rest you can get from the link down below. Of course, we'll all be interested in the speed selector switch, and it's nice to have it on a switch. I've never used a turntable where you have to change the position of the belt on the pulley, but I don't think I'd like it. 33 and 45, of course. Is anyone going to miss 78, considering that they'd need a 78 cartridge? I'll throw in here that the head shell is removable, so heavy-duty enthusiasts who like to swap cartridges will be happy. No, delighted. Now, the counterweight. The instructions are very clear on how to mount it, being packed separately, and set the tracking force. In common with other turntables I've tried, though, it feels a bit loose as I'm fitting it. But there is a screw in the counterweight that tightens it up on the arm perfectly. I hope I'm doing it right, because there's no mention of this screw in the manual. The head shell. Well, it's a very nice head shell, isn't it? But I can point out that unlike my old SME arm, where the overhang was adjusted at the pivot end, here you'll do it in the head shell. I guess I'm neutral on this, but whichever way, it's important. I'll be getting out my protractor in my next video, so we'll hopefully be able to confirm that the alignment is correct as received from the factory. Now, this is important because I feel that having an anti-skating adjustment, call it bias if you prefer, marks the transition from a mere music lover's entry-level turntable and entry-level for hi-fi enthusiasts and audiophiles. Keeping it brief, due to the geometry of the arm and friction between the stylus and the groove, the arm has a natural tendency to skate inwards. Here's a shot of another turntable using the blank area of a test disc. Clearly what's going to happen is that the stylus will press more heavily on the side of the groove nearer the spindle, which I think anyone would suspect to be a bad thing. So, with anti-skate, this can be corrected. What's important though is that because the amount of friction is related to the stylus tracking force, anti-skate bias needs to be adjustable. And on the Fosi Luna3, yay, it is. And I'll be adjusting it in my follow-up video. Okay, I think that's enough for now. I'll be setting up and demonstrating the Luna3 in my next video. But one more thing is, or are, the isolation feet. The Luna3 isn't sprung, and the isolation feet are only slightly squishy. Don't worry, I'll include a vibration test in my follow-up. Commenters, what would you like to see in my next video on the Fosi Luna3? See you soon.